This segment of Delmarva Life is brought to you by the law offices of Tunnell and Raysor.
It's perhaps the least fun part of life to think about, death, but it's worth preparing for, and earlier than one might think. Now, when it comes to your will, working on it now might save quite a bit of trouble down the road.
And with life's many twists and turns, keeping it up to date is absolutely crucial. Delmarva Life's Katie Zerilli discussed that with Christophe Clark Emmert of Tunnell and Raysor.
Christophe Emmert is proud to be a partner here at the law offices of Tunnell and Raysor. She's an attorney passionate about her practice areas, two of which are estate planning and estate administration.
Estate planning is an area of the law that helps protect people while they're alive and also once they're gone. It can include a will, which is the document that says who gets your assets when you're gone and who's in charge of handling that. It also can include a power of attorney, which allows an agent to act for you in financial matters. And it can include an advanced healthcare directive, which says what your medical wishes are if you can't make those decisions yourself, and who's going to be in charge of making those decisions.
When I think of will, I always think of like towards the end of life, right? But it's probably a good idea to do a will earlier in life, right? Like when's a good time, I guess, to like consider making a will?
Everyone should have a will, regardless of age. If you're over 18 and you have assets, really you should think about having a will, because that will dictate who receives those assets and who's in charge of handling your affairs when you're gone. It's especially important for folks that have significant assets, including a house or investments or bank accounts. It's also very important for people who have young children, minor children, because the will can say who would raise them if they were gone. Pretty much after 18, when you start acquiring assets, that's like a good time to kind of think about that? It is a good time to think about it. Oftentimes I have clients that will begin doing their estate planning as they have children and start to acquire assets, maybe in their 20s or 30s. I have a lot of clients who also then think about that as they're approaching retirement, and many, frankly, who don't do a will until they're approaching retirement. If you don't have that plan in place saying what you want to have happen and who's going to be in charge of it, intestate law in the state that you live in will dictate who receives those assets, and that may not be what you want.
So how often should you go back and look at your will and kind of like reassess?
It's really important to think about that every few years. Oftentimes agents who you were close with 20 years ago are no longer in your life, or no longer would be able to handle the job that you've tasked them with. And oftentimes folks will think about updating that as they do get older and their own children can step into those roles too.
I would think it would be hard sometimes because it's not like something like that I would think about like every day, right? Like I'm not going through every day being like, you know what I gotta do is like my will. How do you get people to kind of like do that kind of like work, even though it might not like be affecting them at that minute?
It is a challenging subject to approach for a lot of people, because they don't want to think about their own mortality. They don't want to think about what would happen, but frankly, it's really important for them to do so, to take the time, kind of like going to the dentist. Bite the bullet and take care of it, because that's really something that's going to be a benefit to their family once they're gone, so that their wishes can be carried out.
I would think that also, like sorting everything out, keeping everything up to date, like if somebody's naming things to like family members, it probably would give that person like some type of peace of mind to know like that they'll hopefully be like avoiding fights within the family when they're gone.
That is one of the most important reasons for doing an estate plan and clarifying things in a will or a trust, because people can get along very well when they're living or when grandma's living. And oftentimes grief does funny things to people, and people frankly can change. So it's really important to spell out in your documents what it is that you want to have happen, who's going to get the property, who's going to get the jewelry, and that can be all explicit in the documents so that it's very clear what the testator, the person who made the will, what their intent was, and that can be carried out by the executor, the person who's in charge of administering the estate.
Obviously the process can probably be pretty daunting for people. So when they come in here, like, do you kind of like simplify it, make it easy for folks?
It can seem like a daunting process, but we help folks along the way. When they come in with their questionnaire that has that basic information about them, their family, their assets, we talk through it. and we will draft the documents based on their wishes, send them out for their review so they can make sure I didn't give them an extra child, or that they really do reflect their wishes and intent. And then before anything is signed, we review the documents together. I go through them paragraph by paragraph and explain what the language says and make sure that they do understand what they're about to sign, and that more importantly, it does reflect their wishes.
Putting the work in now hopefully means few problems in the future.
Now, we are going to continue this discussion with Christophe tomorrow on Delmarva Life. She's going to clear up a little confusion on the probate process. You got to have someone who understands to help you through things like this, because
Yes.
it's complicated.
It really is, and you can mess things up.